We are here with Dr. Nusrat Ameen, a friend of mine who's done many other family violence and domestic violence seminars before in our local jurisdiction in the United States, in the state of Texas, in the city of Houston, the energy capital of the world. So, Nusrat, it's good to see you again. We 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 have an exciting topic that we're going to talk about today. Let's go ahead and pull up your help sheet right now. We're going to talk about domestic violence, specifically financial abuse. What would you like to talk to us, share with us about the green column?
Thank you, Tom. So the first thing I wanted the viewers to understand that financial abuse is one of the part of the many abuses that the victim survivor faces in the hand of the abuser. So domestic violence is also known as domestic abuse or intimate partner violence, which is IPV, and can be defined as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power control over the other individual.
I've never heard of IPV, intimate partner violence. Do you find that that's an international term, or is that just another term in American law or North American law?
This is used as globally as well as in the American system.
Intimate partner violence, IPV. I learned something already. Okay, let's keep going.
So the types of the violence and abuse can be physical, emotional, like threatening to divorce, psychological, like threatening to commit suicide or to self-harm, sexual abuse, financial abuse, the one that we are going to talk about today, stalking, like showing up unexpectedly at unexpected places, like at work or personal appointments, etc. Digital abuse, which we are seeing much more nowadays, is because all of us have social media. So like monitoring and controlling your Facebook and other social media online activities by the abuser. Spiritual, which is, for example, using the partner's religion or spiritual beliefs to manipulate. In-law abuse, which we see in common in the work that I do with immigrant population, and the immigration-related abuse. There are researchers which says that U.S. citizens and immigrant women may face 3 times higher abuse than in the general U.S. population. So, and we see that 75% of the abuses never file immigration for this process. So immigration abuse is also a unique abuse that we see here.
Okay.
And if you go to the forms of abuse, all the above types of abuse can be manifested through threat, intimidation, coercion, and isolation. So you need, when you're talking to a survivor or a victim, you need to ask some questions by which all these will come, on the forefront. Like abuse, what is the common relationship between the abuser and the victim? The information can greatly influence your legal and non-legal opinion. So if you'd rather not continue, then ask that, are you feeling intimidated? We can stop here, give time, and then again talk, because we also need to remember the mental health that the victim is going through.
You
So
know,
if we
one thing I think about is, as you know, I do a lot of online mediation, and I've done about 2,500. That's 2,500 online mediations. And the two things I think about are I need to identify from the very beginning or in the mediation memorandums that the attorneys, depending on which country you're in, some countries and some areas of law require mediation memorandums up front. Um, some jurisdictions do, some don't. But as either a modern legal professional or as a modern mediator, I need to think about what are the different types of abuse that may be going on, and also never saying I know what you're going through, because I have no idea. I have no idea. It could be a man of the same race, the same culture, the same religion, the same neighborhood. I don't know what he's been through. I don't know what he's been through, but we all can focus on attempting to identify these different types of abuse and then having strategies to be effective, right?
Absolutely. So when we are thinking globally, there are different jurisdictions use different ways of conducting an interview or going through the mediation. As you said, some of them,
Right,
some
right.
of the jurisdictions have mediations. But one thing we must remember here when we are dealing with survivors of domestic violence, that mediation actually does not work where there is an inequity in the relationship. So before even if going to the mediation, we need to find out the actual situation that the victim survivor is going through. Like, for example, would you feel comfortable telling me about your partner? How do you describe your partner? Typically, what happens when you and your partner disagree? Does he respect your opinion? Has your partner ever acted in ways that scares you? And if yes, then can you tell me more about that? So that comes under that coercion, intimidation, threat, etc. Are you
Yeah,
able
we,
to
we,
think
we have
of
about 1 minute to finish up the green column. What do you want to continue to focus on the green column?
so all the ways that a partner a client would actually feel uh, going to the mediation before. So you need to understand what the client actually is feeling, right? At that point, has your
Sure.
partner ever prevented you from taking you to your medication or seeing a doctor? Do you have children? Does he use the children against you? So just have that conversation with the client to understand her situation, whether there is domestic violence, or you can understand from these questions, right?
Now, I see that you mentioned specifically you have a box here of information, a good checklist of what we as modern legal professionals should look at when dealing with financial abuse and also red flags. Can you address this in about a minute?
The okay, the financial abuse. The so prevent there are many red flags, there are many ways of understanding whether the victim is going through the financial abuse, right? So preventing the victim keeping her or his job, making her ask for money, controlling her bank account, limited access to the account, not letting the victim know about the family income, coerce the money to go to the abuser's account. We always see that even if the client, victim, survivor is earning, all her account money is going to the joint account, which is controlled by the abuser. So coerce victims into signing credit cards or opening business accounts. For example, M meets T while traveling, a US citizen living in the United States, and then immigrates to US after they were married. M has a limited English proficiency while her husband speaks English fluently. So M does not understand the US financial system while T has been utilizing it for years. So T abused M psychologically and emotionally, telling her she was stupid, incompetent, could not be trusted to make any financial decisions, and she had to obey to follow every decision that he made. So he often forced her to sign financial documents, which we all the time see that and without understanding what she is signing to, or because he hid them from her and just gave her a signature page without him knowing.
Right.
And so this is something very common that we see where, survivors, victims just sign papers without knowing what they are signing. So the red flags would be what to look into identifying the potentials, and the red flags are, whether he's hiding assets, whether a fraud on the community property, whether this holding any business without the spouse's knowledge or consent, what she is signing or what he is signing, whether he's putting her, into debt, and whether hiding the income or diverting the asset. We always see many of the abusers divert the assets in their parents' name, in their, and or sends it abroad, opening
Now,
credit.
of course, our focus is global here with Toolkit.law. Now, certainly in any jurisdiction, because in the 80 countries with English-based legal systems, there are about 1,200 jurisdictions. In the United States, they're by state. In Canada, they're by provinces. Okay. Now, you certainly in this right column, let's focus on the yellow column now. Obviously, for the majority of the countries, this is rather localized information. You do have some national information, but I would think that if nothing else, these would be good sources for people to start at if they're looking for referrals or where to find information in their jurisdictions. What are your thoughts on that?
The first thing is to have the knowledge about what financial abuse is, because we are defining it as a unique abuse, right?
Right.
So all the references that I've given, maybe in the United States, but you can get a lot of knowledge of what actually constitutes financial abuse, and that will get you to a place where you can have your opinion well formed, where you can actually help this victim survivor in her or his case. So that is the reason that some of the national organizations websites are given, and also some direct agencies who work with survivors, and they know what domestic violence is when it comes to financial abuse, and if you are seeing it from the USA. But if you're not, then these some of the referrals, the national referrals, will give you the knowledge of what financial abuse actually is, and um, in domestic violence situations.
Nusrat, now you are originally from what country?
I am from Bangladesh.
Bangladesh. So when you come from an Asian, and of course, I know there are many, 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 many cultures within Asia. But when you come from a culture such as you do from Bangladesh, what do you think is, do you have an opinion as to what's different? How would they view the concept of financial abuse in Asian countries versus, say, Western countries?
It is actually a very good question, because we don't even give that importance. We just in Asian countries, or the country that I come from, or other countries, they just define domestic violence, whether there's physical abuse. The reason I
Abuse,
am
just
doing it,
abuse, yeah.
the reason I'm doing it, because I want everyone to understand how finances is the main, disagreement that ends up into domestic violence. And research points out
Yeah.
to 99% of the abuse cases in the USA
Included.
result from financial abuse,
You
and
know,
that is the reason I'm focusing.
I can believe that because in handling over, at least in American culture, over being involved in over 3,000 family law matters. And I would think that many people in our many countries that are watching us, you could see where mostly with the man, if they're the type of person who is prone to these different categories of abuse, they want to control the other party in whatever way they can. And financial is right there at the top of the list as far as ease of implementing or utilizing, right? And,
Correct.
and of course, in many cultures, different partners in a relationship will have differing understandings of what community property laws and separate property laws within different cultures. And if those cultures are religion driven or they're, common law driven, Um, Now, Bangladesh, you were a British colony, right?
Yes.
Now, are you like in Pakistan, where they publish all laws in English and your other mother language?
Correct. So we have
Yeah.
usually it is in Bangla, but we also have English. So when I was teaching at Dhaka University Law Department, I was a professor. I used to teach in English, and I used to also,
Yeah, and just like in Pakistan, most people would
yes,
not know this. Pakistan is number 3 in the world of English speakers behind India and the United States, and all law schools are taught in English. They have 105 million English speakers in Pakistan, and,
correct.
and yet they all laws are done in English and in Urdu. And I believe you just said your mother tongue is Bangla. Is that right?
Bangla, yes.
Bangla. Never. Okay, I learned something else from you today. Okay, so and of course you brought up a really good point. What happens if you come from one culture? Say you marry someone here in the United States, and then you and that partner move to Bangladesh. Maybe you go the opposite direction, right? And one knows the culture and one doesn't. One knows the laws and one doesn't. Financial abuse would be right at the top of the list of where we as modern legal professionals need to be on the lookout.
Correct, correct.
Okay, let's go back.
Um,
Let's go back to the help sheet. Let's do this. Let's go do the second page of the help sheet. Now you've got here mediation. So that's my area. What about mediation and financial abuse do you wish to point out?
So the main thing I want to point out in this section is that people don't even understand, uh, the financial situation they are at, because in many of the parts of the world, finances are always something, controlled by the males. So when and especially in the Asian countries, if you look at South Asia and other Asian countries, you see that your dad, and then your husband, and then your son. So women are hardly using financial tools. So you have to assess your client's financial situation, right? And client may not understand the basic finances like banking, having a credit card, debit card access. Client may earn, but the finances are going to abuser's account and then controlled. So then you have to speak about the rights of having access to finances. And going back to like a country like Bangladesh, how many of our population has banking access or the credit and the debit cards? One affluent community. Otherwise, if you go to the rural areas, where I don't know if this will be also used there, but if it is, then though they don't even have any concept of finances, right? So, for example, do you, when you're using the personal information, do you know the person who is using the information? Has the person done anything other things to you? Are you afraid of this person? Do you want to sign a lease? Do you have a mixed feeling of signing? How did it happen when you ended up signing? We have so many of us survivors who are made to sign the lease when they are brought here,
I
but the abusers never even,
explain it.
pay the lease. So they
Oh,
are
yeah.
responsible for those, right? So if there's any reason to agree to this, did you ever get eviction notice? Like, if you fail to pay the rent, you're evicted. Are you worried about what or anyone in your family or friends or any partner might come to know if you're talking about these abuses?
And of
Who
course,
pays
when
the
you're
money?
doing case intake, these are the items, these are the questions you want to ask, and these are the court admissible documents that you want to obtain, right?
Yeah, so this is the initial consideration before going to the mediation, that you have to have all this information when you go to the mediation.
Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes left for this second page. Tell us about pre-mediation considerations and mediation day and final consideration. These last 3 boxes on the green column.
So the pre-mediation consideration should be to get all the important documents, like ask the client to provide the bank statement, provide any credit debit card, any statement from the debt collectors or other financial debt related letters, explain to client why it is important to show the evidence of financial abuse and control to establish the domestic violence. So get all the necessary papers from the client. We also ask the client even to give us any recording, like if there's any recording that the abuser is maintaining the power control and asking her to sign it or something, pressuring her or him. I'm using the her because 89% of the clients are females. So, but it includes him also. And the day of the mediation, have all the relevant facts and the evidence ready to prove the financial abuse, right? For example, any transaction proof to other family members or even international, right? If there's a tax fraud, we often see that they, even if they are separated or the children are with the mother, the abuser is showing the children living with him and asking for the tax. So there's tax fraud here in the USA. And globally, we have to think. Otherwise, of every country has a tax. So whether there's some tax fraud and whether the client has a proof of that, have the mediator access all the relevant facts and evidence to establish financial abuse in the relationship. For example, client had no access to debit credit card. Clients had no earning going to account, which is controlled by the abuser. Client's name was used to purchase credit cards without consent. So these are the final considerations. Client's name was signed by forging signature in a business, incurring loss, damaging client's credit score. So we see these things very often where there's to see that the financial abuse contributes to the domestic violence.
Okay, great. Now let's switch over to our last column as we have about 7 minutes left. What else about mediation?
So the mediation is something that, many of our clients, especially if the clients, like if you think of globally, they're not, first of all, they don't understand what mediation is and they're not prepared. They're scared because there's already a power control and threat, and they want to know how the mediation happens. In the USA, the mediation happens where parties are not in the same room. They are in different rooms, and the mediator who's appointed by the court goes to different rooms with different set of the agreement. In other countries, in
hold
Bangladesh,
on.
I don't see that.
Yeah, hold on one thought, because I'm the attorney who invented online mediation in America in 2017. So now, and certainly in family law in the United States, 2/3 of all mediations are done online. And in many countries and in many states, you have the right to request online mediation if you can allege and have credible evidence of or credible allegations of types of abuse. So I would push back. No, pushback's not the right word. To many of the countries where you are not pioneering online mediation, you need to be doing so immediately, because in certain jurisdictions, the laws say you don't have to go to mediation if there was family violence. Well, the abuser loves that because he gets to draw out the cost of litigation because he wants to go to court, right? And he wants to tell the judge how he was right and she was wrong and he was justified. But I encourage everybody, just as we're having this online CLE webinar, if your jurisdiction is not yet pioneered online mediation, I can tell you in the United States, over half of all mediations are online. And in family law, where there's an allegations of where one party may feel intimidated in the same building or the same hallway or being in two different rooms across from each other, and you're afraid that that other abuser may come busting into your room, you're right. They can't make decisions without fear. Many times people will do hybrid mediations where one party, maybe the husband and his lawyer, are on site, but the wife and her attorney are remote. And so I just encourage everybody to push the limits on using Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, and similar platforms, because I've done over 2,500 mediations online since 2017, and I settled 93% of my cases on final orders. I find it to be a far more efficient route. But many judges in many countries still want to think old school, and they're not thinking about the victim's perspective, right? Why, if that wife knows she's been a victim of some type of violence, and he's might be waiting for her in the parking lot after mediation to attack her, or he's somewhere in the building and she doesn't know until he comes, she's afraid he can come busting in the door. How could that other party possibly make rational, calm decisions, even with a legal professional to help them, right?
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. In my experience, I have seen many of the courts do understand this, and because it has become a norm now to go Zoom, especially after the COVID, um, it is happening, but many of the courts don't allow. So there is mediation, in person. And when we are thinking of mediation, we are thinking of making the uh, victim safe. So ensuring the safety and security of the victim survivor is maintained. Number one. Number two, considering if the victim survivor needs an interpretation, they can be, they may need interpreters if they're in a foreign land. So making sure that the person has an interpreter, making sure that the person reaches the place of the mediation safely, and how to go to that place safely is something that as an organization, when we are dealing with victims of domestic violence, we ensure that. And
We
of
have
course, all the courts,
we have about 2 minutes left.
and of course, the
Nusrat,
courts also.
Nusrat, I have the privilege of knowing of how much experience you have in this area. When you're talking to modern legal professionals with these last 2 minutes, what do you, what, if you could, what is it about financial abuse? Could you help us better identify it? Because as modern legal professionals, many of us by default, we think of physical violence, right? We think of police involvement. What is it do you think we are missing about financial abuse? Or we don't understand?
So yes, and you just put it correctly, is that we have to pinpoint where the abuse is. So
Okay.
as an academic, I have I have a published book where I I have said that how you people don't understand where the abuse is. So then there's misuse of law, right? So if a person does not have, for example, if a person does not have a physical abuse, doesn't mean that the person is not going through domestic violence. It can be many other things, right? So to
And it's
understand the
traumatic. And
abuse,
it's traumatic.
it is traumatic.
It's
So you
traumatic.
have to understand why this person is coming to you. You need to have those background questions to understand what the person is going through. So you as an advocate need to do the advocacy for your client, and how you can do the advocacy is, and you have to know the person, what the person is going through. And finances is one of the big abuses that is cannot be seen, but that can be felt and that can be lived through. And for that reason, a person can be, kept captive in that abusive relationship because
And
of that kind of.
depending on the laws of the 80 countries that Toolkit.law focuses on, I could see a strategy where the abuser is thinking of filing for divorce or wants to prevent it, and he makes sure to accumulate a lot of debt that the other party has to share to use that as leverage against them.
Absolutely. And that is one of the reasons many of the victims are trapped into living in that relationship, because they have to now, they're also a part of that death.
So Nusrat, Ameen, thank you again for joining me for another webinar, which you and I have worked together on. And this concludes our domestic violence, our domestic abuse section, our family abuse section on financial abuse.